Yes. Hello, Simo. We are again
Hello.
here.
We've spent the last 5 hours just preparing for today's episode. We've never been this well prepared.
Exactly. This is the most we ever did. so,
Yes,
so big expectations to be set today.
for
On
sure.
You saw people are recognizing how resplendent
Yes, we've taken ownership of that term.
of that term. Yeah, but it's good. We have a great topic today. We have some great music.
Hmm.
We're getting ready, to close up this year with standard deviation. Look at us, 14 episodes. Who would have?
Yeah, it's
Who would have?
crazy.
I don't know when the fuck we did all of these episodes,
Yeah,
but we did it.
yeah, we are very busy people and we have time for this kind of nonsense. I think that's very impressive.
It is exactly.
Yeah,
So, how are you doing? I've seen so much from you in the last period.
yeah.
Just to catch
I
up.
know, I know. I've been all over the place. So there is something to be said about this process, though. So last week we were on vacation. We went to Lapland to kind of just zone out for a while, and it was great. Did no work there, and or almost no work, so we really had a nice vacation. But every now and then, I have to check my emails to see what's going on, and I started getting these weird emails where people on my course or the simmer course, the one that we just updated, the server-side tagging course, were wondering like, I'm trying to do this stuff you do in some of these topics, and I can't do it. Like there's nothing. I don't see that stuff that you show in those videos. Usually I'm not worried, and I wasn't worried then. I'm just wondering, okay, so they're just not doing it right. Maybe I'll get back to this next week. So then on Monday, I think Julius from Analytics Mania writes like, hey, did you guys notice that server-side tagging now has a new recommended backend? Like instead of it used to be running on App Engine,
Now
which
it's
is like
cloud
the technology I've written all of my content around.
run.
It's now using Cloud Run, and it's an expected change. Like it was well known that it's going to come at some point. But yeah, so then I go and check it out, and it's not just that the recommendation has changed, but the entire like provisioning process has changed. So every when you create a server-side tagging container, it now deploys it in Cloud Run, and basically everything from that point on is very different than what we had in our very recently updated course. So this whole week, I don't think I've ever put out as much content. Well, not ever. Like in the past 5 years, I haven't put as much content out as this year. So I had to redo like 1.5 hours of video, all the text content, all our quizzes. I had to write a blog post about it. All these LinkedIn shenanigans. On top of that, I'm just going to go through it because this sounds like I hate busy weeks. I'm the laziest person in the world, so this is very uncomfortable for me. So I got to say this. We also on Measure Slack, which I've talked about a lot, and remember to join if you're not already a member. It's one of the biggest community for analytics and data people out there. So Measure Slack, we now have this volunteer team, and we've been like going through a backlog of almost like 3,000 applications. And every single one of those applications needs to be verified against LinkedIn. That is this person a real person? Does the name match, and so on? And so if that was another thing that we had going on, we had to get those through. And we actually today we got inbox zero, so we got through the last application. So everybody who has applied for Measure Slack should now be in. And
It's
then on
happening.
top of that, it's been just like a crazy week or crazy couple of weeks. Like in Google Analytics 4, lots of new features, interesting stuff, things going on in the privacy world. It's just like I was typing my newsletter today, and I was just looking at, oh, there's so much to talk about that I'm just not going to bother. And I just took out like half of the uninteresting things away and left only the ones that I know how to rant about. Um, so yeah, it's just been crazy. And on top of that, our family's gone through a head lice problem with our kid, and I'm still recovering from a head cold. So it's like it's been a weird 2 weeks, very uncomfortable for me because I got out of employment to chill and enjoy. Like I thought that entrepreneurship wouldn't be like this, but it's 5 years in and I still haven't learned my lesson. Anyway, yeah, so it's been busy. What about you? How are you?
Yeah, I'm great. Doing good. I also have been super busy in the last weeks. I can't keep up with anything, and I actually I haven't played Diablo in
Oh
like
yeah.
3 weeks, and I'm very depressed because I was level 946.
You're
Yeah, I play.
playing the mobile version, the mobile
Yes,
game?
because I'm
Okay.
lazy. And I have Diablo 4 on the PS5, but I never get to play because of my son. And now he's playing Spider-Man too, so it's over for me. It's
Oh,
like,
okay.
yeah, it's over. So I haven't been able to do anything that I enjoy in the last period because it's just been crazy. And
Yeah.
anyone that works in the agency environment knows that Q4 is when shit gets
Yeah.
real because you have to, work on new retainers to close the existing retainers to make
Yeah.
sure the work is good.
Get
So I'm
all the remaining budget sucked out of your customers.
exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say that because I love my clients and I don't
No, but
want
it
to.
doesn't mean that you don't like them. It's just a reality. They have budgets that they have to spend, or they
They
will
have to
get the
spend.
same budget next year. Well, suck is probably the wrong word, but leech,
That's
exploit.
even that's even
Yeah, you
worse.
have to exploit your customers to get the pennies out. Shake them and see what drops.
Shake them, yeah, in the most respectful way, shaking them in
Yeah,
the
of
most.
course. Yeah, shake them so that, yeah, in a respectful way, for sure.
And I've been spending
Yeah,
so much time in Firebase for the last two
yeah,
three weeks, and I know a lot of people say that GA4 is just another Firebase. Let me tell you guys that it's not. Like you think. I mean, it does look like it. It does smell like it, but it's a very different world when it comes to app development and tracking when it comes to apps,
yeah,
mobile apps, and then A/B testing when it comes to mobile apps. Like those are different words that you need to have. So I've been struggling a bit with figuring out how to make it work. But I'm working right now. I've actually asked on measures, like as you were mentioning earlier. I asked yesterday what is people's experience with A/B testing with Firebase, which is exactly like Google Optimize, but a bit different. It uses a lot of cloud resources, Cloud Run as well, Cloud Function. So it's a bit different than Google Optimize. So working to figure out how to. It's kind of a case study that we're working right now to use this
yeah,
Firebase A/B testing component, the remote config thing, to create different experiences in the app. But besides, behind every little experimentation project, it's a lot of tracking bullshit that happens.
yeah,
And every time you try to analyze data or to make up different strategy for a business, you realize that you have tracking inconsistencies. And it's
yeah,
like always back to square one because it's like, oh my god, we found this type of information, let's verify this. And then you realize you don't have the actual parameters that track the
yeah,
specific information. And then you start re-auditing, and then you start rebuilding measurement plans. So that's kind of what I've been just going back and forth with Firebase. Luckily I
yeah,
haven't I'm steering as much away as possible from GA4 as much as I can. If I
yeah,
see it, I disclose it. But I notice now that if you go on standard reports and you click edit comparison, there's this horrible, it's the most amazing button called explore, which has nothing to do with the actual functionality. But if you click that explore button, it's gonna automatically create an exploration for you. So if you're in a standard report and you're looking at some comparisons between
yeah,
events or whatever, then from there, if you want to do deeper analysis, you click edit comparisons, and below is this explore button. Terrible UI, but then you can build an
yeah.
exploration. So that was pretty cool. I was happy about that. Was my win. What my GA4 win in the last period. I was like, okay, this is nice. This is cute. But yeah,
Well,
that's
we
kind of
take what
what,
we can get. Yeah,
yeah, that's
GA4
kind of.
wins. We take what we can get.
I've been noticing that people
Yeah.
say that there's not nobody talks about digital analytics anymore. I've seen that on Twitter and on LinkedIn. What are your thoughts on that? Versus G.
I'm going to say that it's a circular argument if there ever was one. No one talks about GA4 anymore, says a person who talks about GA4. Oh man, I know what I think I know what tweet you're talking about. I can't stand that way to start a discussion. It's like saying that, you know, so many people say that blah 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 blah, but this is my counterpoint to that. So your entire counterpoint is based on a circular argument. You don't actually explain the premise. You just assume that it's true. Like that's not like ugh, I get you want to write content, but come on, deliver it with a different strategy than just kind of a begging the question. Anyway, yeah,
Question.
it kind of yeah, it really boils my nerves because there are ways to actually start discussions that are
Yeah, for
not
sure.
based on. Oh man, yeah, I can't stand that. And I personally I haven't seen anybody say that analytics is dead. I've seen people write about how generative AI is going to change how we approach asking questions from analytics, how AI is going to impact us doing gap analysis,
Mm.
modeling, stuff like this. I haven't seen anybody say that, except the people who are worried that they're just not good enough at their jobs. They might be worried about the future. So
I've been
yeah,
thinking
that's
a lot
that's my
about,
thought.
but I've been thinking a lot about this. And when I was doing the podcast alone last year, and you were a guest, you said something very smart that I've been stealing and reusing
No, I don't
from
think so.
you. Oh, it was, you said that people are outsourcing their thought processes to tools. That was a very smart thing to say. That was good. That was a good one. And now, and I've been like, I'm kind of like, that was my thoughts today, is that I see that everyone is doing content about implementation, about technology, and it's great because we need it. But what if 10% of people would actually spend time writing content about how to read the report, or how to understand what the data tells you, or what can you do with the data? So that's something that I think, if more people would invest time, like constructive energy, to write about how to interpret data, how to read it, how to do something with it, then we wouldn't have those conversations like, is anyone doing digital analytics anymore? Well, let's just do it more constructively.
I don't
As
know. I don't know. I'm
and
not sure I agree
you're in
with
a
that.
tough
Like
spot.
I
You're in a tough spot because you write about implementation.
no 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 no. I saw what you wrote on LinkedIn. I didn't take it absolutely not. Like I have a no 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 no. I saw there's a seed of truth in what you say, but I don't like it sounds like a zero sum game when you put it like that.
Mm,
The time we spend on worrying about implementation is away from analysis, and I don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, with some people it might be, some
mm,
people who are stuck in an organization where their role is strictly implementation, and I got to say that's a horrible place to be, unless you love it and you are super satisfied with it. But even then, it's a horrible place to be for the organization around you, because these are interconnected systems. Like
mm.
what you do in implementation can't be isolated. What you do in analysis, processing, reporting, building products, building services. So in that way, there's a seed of truth. Like if our focus is on glorifying implementation, it's a weird thing to focus on, because it's just like celebrating the nuts and bolts and not admiring the actual machine that was built. Like there's artistry to that as well. You can build like super durable parts and craft them from gold or platinum or whatever, but it doesn't really matter in the end game if the thing you build is just a piece of crap, or it doesn't work, or nobody looks at it. So in that way, but they're not mutually exclusive. You can enjoy the nuts and bolts and at the same time appreciate the bigger machine around you. And when you like what I'm going after here is this: when you do the implementation part right and you celebrate that, then it's also easier to celebrate the subsequent steps, because it's also very difficult to write about analysis and interpretations without sounding super shallow, because it's very difficult to say that. And this, I know you see this as well. This, I remember CXL, like Pep from CXL always had this, like, best practices are just stupid. Like, well, not stupid, but something that you shouldn't just carbon copy.
We're just
And
big
in
practices, yeah.
yeah, and in the very same way, implementation stuff can be carbon copy. Like it's when you go to a code level, there are certain things you can actually copy, and they work nicely. But the way someone else approaches data or reporting or insight generation, it's very difficult to write or explain that in a way that makes it actually useful and not just a string of platitudes. I think that's what I'm going for. So, but if you link that to the implementation, if you say that, this is a way to gain amazing insight, assuming you're following this kind of e-commerce schema, then it becomes like a whole thing. So yeah,
No, I
this
get
was
what
just a
you're
super
saying.
elaborate way of saying that I don't think it's a zero sum game.
It's not, and it's also, I mean, what I'm trying to say is that we also should consider the analysis and insights
Mm,
part, not just the implementation. Because think about it, like, you can do a stellar best practice implementation, and you think you just did your job, so but the issues you will find only if somebody does the analysis, and the
yes.
shit doesn't add up. And that's been my experience in the last months. Like, oh, okay, this is done great, and then I start doing the analysis, and I'm like, where's the parameter? Where's the value? Why is this
Yeah.
null in BigQuery? Why is why are we not
Yeah.
tracking this? So you won't like they have to work together. Like the person that does more implementation should communicate with the people that actually do the analysis, because this is the best way to verify how
Yeah.
robust that implementation is. So it has to
Yeah.
be something like togetherness, not just focusing on
No,
what's the
that's,
next tracking tool.
100%, 100%. And the other thing, I'm just now writing a chapter in the technical marketing handbook about this. So another thing is that we look at, like, when somebody shows you a prototypical analytic system, they show you a series of interconnected parts that flow from one to the other. So there's a tracker that feeds into a collector, that feeds into a
Mhm.
processor, that feeds into storage, or something like that.
Yep.
So it's shown as a directed graph, like a one system to the next. And we know that that's not the way to build or use an analytic system. We know that there are cyclical references. Your validation step might find something that needs to inform the collector. Your
Yep.
reports might find a new spam source that needs to inform the tracker. Your reporting person might find a gap in the data that needs to inform the entire measurement planning sequence. So there's all this back and forth going. And I think that's actually a really powerful tell in organizations that do data. Do you have feedback loops? Like,
Feedback loop.
do
Yes.
you have people in the end of the system talking with the people in the beginning of the system? Just look at your process objectively and try to find those. If you don't find those, if you see it's just a waterfall, then you're going to be in trouble, because you're going to be spending so much work on all the wrong things, because you're not informing the previous systems, you're just informing the subsequent systems. There's just this isn't like groundbreaking insight. It's just that we tend to forget that, because the
Never
waterfall
forget.
model is so much easier to understand, and it's so much easier to write about. It's so much easier to consider all of these parts as separate things, only communicating with each other at these very seams. And that's just the way to build a really broken system. I'm just hogging the microphone because this is my
That's
pedestal now. But
good.
one thing I do want to say is that that's one of the reasons why these processes fail so often, is that we assume that everybody appreciates that model because it's so easy. We assume that when I do a good job, the next person will do an incrementally better job, and that's just those kinds of assumptions destroy any data organization in the long run. And it's not just data; it's any kind of collaborative effort that relies on a perfect input that is incrementally improved. I think that's always going to be a problem if there's no communication processes to
But that's
help
part of
along.
this data literacy thing that I was
Yeah,
trying to aim at. It was
yeah,
just a plot because I was angry as always. When I get angry, I just write people or write. I just like
I hear
drop
you.
it. You know what I mean. And when I just like I say all my life story in one thing and then I move on, it helps sometimes. But that's what I was aiming at. Like if we would be much more interested in this feedback loops and iterative type of like improvements
Mm,
of our tracking, of our collection, of our processing, of our reporting, everything, then we would be more literate about what is the data value to the organization, what is
mm,
the data value to decision making, and it cannot just be tied to the implementation in the cloud and whatever. You have to like hug, somebody
mm.
from the reporting team, hug a consultant from time to time because it doesn't
Hug a
work.
consultant day.
Hug
That's
a
that
consultant.
was so good.
But
No,
every
that's
time
it. Yeah,
you're talking about this technical marketing handbook, I get too excited because I know it's coming, and I want to be the first person that sees it.
yeah. It's so difficult to write. Like, it's so difficult to write. I've never been this. Writer's block is the wrong word. I've never been this. Just what's the word when a ship goes into too shallow waters and it's stuck there? Like, I I have a ship and I'm sailing, but I'm stuck on the bottom and I just can't get it off. And the problem is that it's the first time I've had to write something about my own industry in a way that can be accessible for somebody who knows nothing about our industry. I've always had the luxury of not having to worry about that by doing like super technical deep dives and kind of building a reputation around that. But now, and my wife is Mari is really good at like with the checks and balances. So I write something, she's like, nobody's going to understand this. Like nobody's going to understand this. No, well, she says it in much friendlier terms. Of that's my interpretation. So I'm doing just rewrites upon rewrites upon rewrites upon rewrites. It's fun, but it's taxing, and I'm very skeptical. I'm hopeful, but I'm skeptical if we'll actually have it out this year. But it's a lovely project to work on.
I cannot wait to see it, and I know
Yeah,
exactly what you mean. Because every time, like I've been catching myself lately when I'm trying to write something, because I'm too into the depth of it, I
yeah,
forget about the commercial business perspective, making sure people gets it. And I noticed this about myself lately at work when we're talking about machine learning and stuff, just because I've been studying this and putting all the models every time somebody tells me, but can we do this for this? And I already start thinking about the model. I think about the cloud, about like if we have the APIs. And so my manager said to me, Juliana, like you're a commercial person, like you're a business person, like how are you so distracted about this? Because I don't get it, like I'm only thinking about this. And when this stuff is very hard to break down, very complex stuff, to make
yeah,
sure everyone is able to understand, and not because you think you're smarter than anyone else. It's just because you want to make sure people get access to this
yeah.
information in the best way possible. So I feel you. I feel you. But before we get our guest, I have a very special surprise for everyone listening today. So this is the first time I actually have good music for the Seymour for the Seymour ad. So our friend Josh Silverbauer is launching a new album called Universal Sunset, and it also can refer to perhaps something that died this summer. But actually, it's just a rock opera album by Josh Silverbauer, and on this album, besides himself and some glorious guitar done by Jason Packer, we have a lot of people, a lot of friends on this. We have Simo, we have Jin Gianolio, now that I know how to say his name. We have Julian John Mann, we have myself, we have a lot
Hmm.
of we have some people on this album that participated into creating an amazing album, an opera rock album. But it's actually about our world, it's about our industry, it's about the shit that we need to do every single day. Make sure you head to the episode notes to find this album and listen to it. It's free, it's available everywhere. So Simo, I wanna just play on this for you.
The weirdness only got worse with each new party that Cookie went to. After the third party, Cookie had had enough and gave up. He would never find the great tag magician. But as wizards tend to do, that's when the great tag magician found Cookie. The wizard grew from a small glint in the corner of Cookie's eye to a tall man in a pink suit with gloves and a top hat, bowing low in front of Cookie and introducing himself. Fresh from a party in another dimension, the great tag magician had heard of Cookie's plight and wished to help. Cookie and his trusty space urchin were wary of the wizard, but what choice did they have?
There we go.
Such a like a descriptive language in those lyrics. I could just see the scenery in front of me, and the space urchin was just the best pun in the world. Yeah, so Josh is amazing. I've listened to some of his bits and pieces, and I back before I was a total metalhead and a grunge maniac, I listened to a lot of '70s music, and this is like the Who,
Very,
Tommy, all over it, like all over it. That was
absolutely.
one of the first vinyl albums that I actually bought was Tommy, because it was such a. So anyway, this is all over. So if you like '70s rock operas, it's going to be right up your alley. But also, like Juliana said, the if you're in analytics, like there's puns all over the place, and yeah, this was a Simmer ad again. So I have nothing special to add to what we already talked about today. So the server side tagging course is out there now, updated and re-updated. So it's now the latest version, with all the Cloud Run stuff in it. We're working on the technical marketing handbook and just trying to enjoy the rest of the year and relax with it. And if you do want to buy something, then use our special coupon code Deviate. That's DEVIATE to get 10% off an individual course purchase. Does not apply to bundles.
We really need to do something about this. We should see if Mari wants to do it, because she will
Yeah,
probably sound better than both of us.
she'll kill it. Like she'll be so much
Exactly.
better than I am. I do have a segue to our guest, by the way. So
Yes.
we were talking about figuring out how to explain things to audiences that you might not relate to on a kind of an expertise level, for example. And Myles Younger, who's our esteemed guest today, has recently shifted to an education role, working with a company that kind of teaches other companies, and in particular, he's one of the like top people you want to ask about anything regarding ad tech and martech. So I'm anxious to hear about how he approaches teaching those things, because there's just, when we think about data and analytics being complicated, I think the advertising world is even more so, because it's such an interconnection between technologies and systems and people and users and browsers and regulators. And so it's going to be a very, very enlightening talk, hopefully. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, let's get Miles in then.
Yes. Hey, Miles, how are you? Welcome to the show.
I'm good. I'm good. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yeah.
How was the
Yeah. So we
lobby?
were. Oh yeah, the lobby.
Was it fine in the lobby? Did you have enough Skittles?
I texted my wife a picture of me sitting in the lobby. I held up
Okay.
my phone and I said,
This
"This
is
is
dedication.
me waiting to do this podcast. Thanks for taking the kids to school."
Yeah. This is dedication, and thank you to your wife for letting you join us. We will of course send her a copy before we air this episode.
Oh, good, good, good. Yeah.
One thing I want to jump straight into is that I know you best as a quote unquote ad tech dude, and I don't
hmm
mean that in any derogatory way or anything. I want to know, like, how did you get into it? I think if I've understood correctly, you're kind of a builder. So you've built systems in your younger days, and now you're back in education. So what happened?
Yeah. So as many of us fall into the things that we do professionally, I totally fell into ad tech. Some friends and I started a self-serve Flash banner ad builder back in, well, we started working on it in like 2008 in our spare time. We launched it live, I believe, in 2010. This was
Nice.
actually a novel concept at the time, and Steve Jobs had not yet killed Flash. And that business, kind of just, it didn't grow very much, and so we pivoted over to dynamic ads, like so for product remarketing.
Yep.
The ad with the red shoes follows you around the internet, and built that piece of ad tech from the ground up, and that was in about 2012, 2013. And so, I mean, that's just basically how I ended up in ad tech. I had no knowledge in 2008 that ad tech as a thing even existed. I was just solving kind of a problem I had encountered as a marketer,
Yep.
having to work with Flash designers to get Flash banner ads built. And it was just a very excruciating process for what you really were getting at the end of the process. It's just a little banner ad. And so I wanted to streamline that whole process and templatize it. And like I said, that business didn't really go anywhere. Switched over to dynamic ad serving, and that did a lot better. And I lived in San Francisco at the time. I live in Portland, Oregon now, but at the time I lived in San Francisco, and there were a million ad tech
Mm.
startups, even just within like one or two blocks of our office.
Yep.
Practically any company I could look up on the Lumascape had an office within a block or two of the WeWork that we worked at in San Francisco. And so that was just kind of how I got into ad tech. And once I got into it, once I, became an entrepreneur and sort of met this other community of whatever, builders, founders, whatever you want to call them, I you don't really want to go back to just having like a regular day job at that point, and
I
so
hear
I
you.
never have.
So what was the bubble like then? Like you said that you were all close by, and you had, of course, tightly knit communities. How much was it like just celebrating all these innovations in engineering, and how much were you concerned? Because I'm sure that some of you were crystal ball gazing, like what the future is going to hold for edtech. How much of it was like preparing for those eventualities, like third party
you,
cookies maybe already rumored that they might be going away? And
It's not something that I gave a great deal of thought to at the time. So, and we'll just use the years of like 2013, 2014 when I'm speaking
Mm,
right now. Third party cookies were still very much a thing. The thing that some people in ad tech were like concerned about, I guess there wasn't even a whole lot of concern, was ad blockers.
hmm
That was around the time that ad blockers were becoming very popular. But, I think the prevailing attitude at that point was, well, if they're using ad blockers, then we don't really want to advertise to them anyways. So forget those people. And it's this tiny segment of like geeks who like install
yeah.
ad blockers, and most normal people don't care at all.
Mm,
Everyday people don't care. And then the other thing was that what we would now refer to as pseudonymized data. So the hashing, or just
yeah.
giving somebody an anonymized cookie ID. It's just a random string of letters and numerals. That was considered, and I considered it as well, considered to be like pretty privacy safe, because I ran a dynamic ad server that had a cookie pool at the peak, probably in the hundreds of millions of
Mm,
global internet browsers were cookied by my platform at any one time. This is because I worked with a lot of like e-commerce brands that were getting traffic in the millions of hits a month, and so you get multiple of those clients, and you very quickly build up
yeah.
a cookie pool of easily hundreds of millions of users. And I would tell people, like, look, because there were a lot of people. It's like I would, I talk to family members and tell them what I do, or you talk to sort of like everyday normal people, and you tell them what you do, and they're like, I hate those ads. I'm like, I'm sorry, they're harmless, but what what do you want me to do here? And so like that, well, that should have been the first clue, is talking
Yeah.
to everyday people and them being like, I hate those ads, dude.
Yeah.
Um, um, because from my perspective, it's great. Oh, it's great. They're personalized. It's perfect.
That's the bubble
Uh,
speaking, right?
yeah, yeah, right, exactly. And so, but what I would tell people is that, look, if a bad actor were to crack into my platform's like audience data tables, let's say, the data would be useless. I
Mm,
mean, useless. There was nothing in that data that and this is true to this day. There was nothing in that data that would identify someone. But that's partly because I wasn't collecting that type of data. Like, I could have been collecting all kinds of,
mm,
interesting data about these people, but my platform wasn't designed to do that. And so there wasn't any reason to collect that type of data. And so that was how I thought of it. And that was how most of the industry thought of it at the time. It's like, oh, well, it's all pseudonymized. And so
yeah.
if you remove it from the precise system that it was designed for, so in my case it was a DCO platform, if you remove it from that platform and from that web domain, because those cookies are only going to work with that domain, if you remove it from that, it is utterly meaningless data. It is just noise.
Yeah.
And everybody thought and that was pseudonymization, so it's not anonymization, it's pseudonymization. Everybody thought that was good enough at the time.
Yeah. So one of the things you mentioned is this, people's the layman's aversion to being hounded by ads, and how they hate
Hmm.
that. I mean, obviously, much of that has to do with just site design. Like ad placements are horrible, like the way you just block your entire content.
Yep.
But how would you, like, even today as an educator, how do you explain the story of, and on the other hand, you have the open and free internet, and then you have a model
Hmm.
that the content creators need to be monetized with? How do you explain to people that not all ads is just about generating more shoe sales? It's also about having sites like Wikipedia up and running, and having sites like Medium up and running. How do you explain that?
I mean, it's something that I try not to get too far into, so I don't offend the wrong people.
Mm,
you're, you're always going
I
to
like
offend one
yeah.
one side of the equation, or the other. Um, but I what I came to realize, I don't know, 5, 6 years ago, around the time that the GDPR rolled out in 2017, and Safari ITP, I think, launched the same year. Um, was, you know what? It doesn't matter what ad tech thinks, what the publisher community thinks. What matters is whether everyday people like it or not, and if it's something that, if ads are unobtrusive enough that people have no opinion on them. I mean, you almost kind of want it so that everyday people just don't have an opinion, you know? Like you don't, because you don't want people to have an opinion on ads. Once they develop an opinion on ads, those ads aren't working. Like part of the whole
Yeah.
thing with ads is that it has to be on a certain level, subliminal and subconscious. Once you start thinking about the fact that you're watching an ad, of course you hate it. You're like, well, I'm not going to buy this thing, because you're like pushing it really hard. If you wouldn't
Yeah.
push so hard, then maybe I'd consider buying it. Whereas from the advertiser's perspective, it's like, well, I have to tell you it exists, otherwise you're never going to buy the thing. And
Yeah.
so, the best ads are the ones that really kind of aren't noticed consciously in that way. And so, like, that's the realization I had a few years ago, is like, because ad tech used to get very defensive, even as recently as 5 or 6 years ago. We get very defensive, say around Safari ITP, GDPR, of like, well, how dare they? This is all harmless pseudonymized data. And it sort of lost the plot on, like, yeah, but everyday people don't like this, and what they're the ones who buy all the stuff. That's the whole reason all of this exists, is so they'll buy stuff. And so we can't piss them off. We can't piss off consumers. And so that's largely my personal
Yeah.
philosophy on it, and how I tend to explain sort of the, if you're going to peel away all the layers of the onion, like what's at the middle, and it's everyday people. And what do they
Mm.
want? What do they not want? What is it they're going to notice? What are they going to not notice and just not care about? Anyway.
But there's so many parties to the game. There's advertisers, publishers. There's the end, the regular people on the street. Then there's browsers, regulators, and see, I've been looking at some of the, like, the public discussions on GitHub around Privacy Sandbox, for example, and just it's so acrimonious. Like, everybody has their own vested
Yeah.
interests. Everybody's fighting against each other, and anytime some kind of even small consensus emerges, it's like completely bulldozed by
Oh no.
nitty gritty
Yeah.
details, and then it's like just filibustered, totally out of contention. So, do you see, like, this is super crystal ball gazing, but do you see any possible future in the multiverse where there's going to be a consensus that emerges that this is the way to do online advertising in a way that all these parties will be at least
Uh,
moderately happy and willing to compromise?
Firstly, acrimonious, great word. I think it's a very apt word to describe, the whatever dialogue, around that stuff. I don't, I don't think so. I don't. I just don't see. I think that if there were to be an actual standard that everybody would agree on, my feeling is it would almost have to be regulated by, and I guess, you know what, I'm speaking from the perspective of like the United States market.
Yeah.
So the EU might be different, because the EU is just, it's more friendly to regulation. Like the United States is very unfriendly to regulation, very unfriendly to government interference in anything. And I think that you'd have to have some kind of government, interference, because the whole sort of challenge with digital and challenge with the web is there's like zero barrier to new entrants. It's not like the phone companies, where you had to invest in installing phone lines everywhere,
Mm,
or the water company or the power company. These things that can be kind of regulated and standardized. I don't know that the web is ever going to sort of arrive at that kind of a standard for the purposes of advertising.
yeah.
The third party cookies, if you sort of look backward, were, you could interpret them as a mistake, just like nobody thought through, or I'm sure people were thinking through it at the time, but clearly nobody would cared enough about the unintended consequences that these things would have, of like, wait, you're making a backdoor that's native to the browser. You're making a backdoor for cross domain tracking that's
Mm.
native to the browser. Today, we would just like, everybody would laugh at that idea if someone
Yeah.
proposed that, of like, no, let's build a little native backdoor for a third party to track you everywhere. Everybody would just like die laughing. And yet it it was built, and that just became this really convenient sort of, I think, anomalous thing that what we now call ad tech or walled gardens,
Mm,
whatever, could essentially like exploit and monetize. And when I say exploit, I don't even mean it in a bad way. I just like, well,
yeah,
you made this feature, we're going to use the feature, and we're going to use it to build an industry and make money and help publishers make money and help advertisers sell things. But I just don't know that like history is going to repeat itself that way, because it was, like I said, it was a mistake to begin with. Like
yeah,
it was clearly sort of a kind of an error.
But how does the client fit into all of this stuff? Because like we are talking about, the technical aspects of it, the industry aspects of it, but the person that pays you to run their ads just wants to sell their shoes. That's just Simo was saying. Like they don't give a shit. They just want to sell their shoes. So you were in an agency before, so you probably worked with a lot of clients, as we all know and love. And I just want to know, like, how are we educating the clients that actually pay millions to publishers and to all this, I hate it when people say this tech giants, but let me be like that. Oh, this tech giants, this evil tech giants.
Well,
uh
whether they're
how
evil or
are we
not, they're
educating these
huge.
guys?
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah, I mean, it is what it is. But like,
Yeah,
what is the message that we are sending to clients?
I,
Like, how can we educate this stuff?
I mean, I guess, being at U of Digital, I'm in a somewhat more convenient position now where we're purely educators. We don't make recommendations to clients as to what they should or should not do. We just educate them,
Yeah,
because there really are no easy answers there.
mm,
Like, the closest sort of analogy that and I don't even think it's analogy. I think it's like an actually an accurate description of what's going on is tech debt. It's like, well, you can accumulate tech debt and make rapid progress on something and have a thing that works really well in the moment, but the fact is you're going to have to unwind that someday, and it's going to be painful. And this is a known concept in technology, and I'm not like a tech debt expert, and so I'm sure there's frameworks for unwinding tech debt and all that kind of stuff. I'm sure people have thought about it. Um, um, but that's the inconvenient truth. It's like you built up a bunch of tech debt, and now you the advertiser, have to unwind it. Your agency partner has to unwind it. All your tech partners have to unwind it, or you have to find new tech partners who are going to, or you have to find new agencies that are going to. Um, and but that doesn't, like, Juliana, that doesn't make anybody happy. Like that,
I know.
it's not a very convenient answer. It doesn't really, to your point, it doesn't address like the client's like pressing question of, okay, yeah, so I have tech debt, but like, what about my sales numbers next quarter? Like,
mm,
Yeah, that's it.
I don't want to hear about tech debt. So I don't know. I don't have like a great, you know, uh, um, answer. Like, if I was a CMO, I would just be looking hard at like alternative types of media that just don't use,
mm,
that I know for a fact don't use cookies. So rather than trying to use media types where I have to discern, is this cookieless or not? Like, if you
yeah,
have to ask the question, it's probably not cookieless. They're probably secretly using cookies and not telling you, or they're
yeah,
secretly fingerprinting, or they've got something going that's sort of like on life support, and they're not telling you about it. Whereas if you use something that is purely cookieless, like, I don't know,
mm,
CTV, or audio or something like that, gaming, or advertising inside the walled gardens. Like, it's not obviously technically purely cookieless, but at least it's all on a first party basis. Um, um, that's what I would be doing. I'd just be like, you know what? I'm not even going to ask the question. I'm just going to go use media that I know is 100% cookieless,
yeah.
and I'm not going to deal with that.
And
Anyway, that's my personal opinion. But like I said, I'm not in the business of giving advice. So
I
but
mean, we
I
give
think
advice to our listeners now.
yeah, of course, and yes, and to us as well, as future blooming ad tech magicians. But I like I think everybody. Well, I don't know if everybody. I think most people who have experience with organic growth, like doing newsletters or whatever, they know that that's like the ROI on that is spectacular. Like you can get a steady growth, um, but it just doesn't scale as well, and you need dedicated resources for it. So of
Yeah,
course, like I don't blame companies that want to sell stuff for just throwing money at whatever means they have of doing so, and ads have a proven track record of getting you incremental gains. So I think the problem comes when you throw money at ads and then in return you get litigated. Like that's where you're like, whoops, nobody
yeah,
told me that I'm
no,
going to be sued for this stuff.
you,
I thought Google wasn't going to do any evil. That's what they promised.
yeah, no, you definitely don't want to get sued. No, no, you can't blame advertisers for advertising, for
Yeah.
seeking out new customers and growth, and that was the thing. Is the thing they're not fully deprecated yet with third-party cookies is, and that's the whole thing, going back to the like questioning, like why was this ever even launched as a feature? It's a backdoor into literally every browser, like and so like that scale is hard to resist. It's like, wait, you mean I can just literally target like virtually anyone? Like they visit almost
Mm.
any site and they'll be cookied, and I can now they're now targetable by me. um um that's pretty hard to resist, that kind of, like, I don't know what you would call it, sugar high
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that third party cookies have enabled. But I mean, I don't know. I feel like I'm reading more statistics. I'm sorry, I can't like pull any off the top of my head, specific ones, but I mean, I don't know. Well, I don't know if either of you have like followed any of the recent statistics or like working with your clients. It almost feels like they're going in two directions right now, where some people are publishing statistics to say, oh, advertisers are, they're not prepared for the death of the cookie. But then I read other statistics that seem to indicate that a lot of advertisers have moved a lot of their media off of third party cookies and aren't really worried about it. And it's not that they're not worried because they're dumb, because I think that was the story of a few years ago of like, oh, well, these people just aren't paying attention. That's why they're not worried. I think now they understand it and they're just like, yeah, I don't know, we'll use them till they're gone and we got other stuff we can spend money on.
That's
you know?
Sure.
that's a really good observation. I can't say I've seen the exact same thing, but one couple of threads that I have seen is, first of all, the when you say that third party cookies are an anomaly, it's absolutely true. But it's interesting how it's kind of turned into a whole thing. That now the third party cookies are going away, all sorts of new technologies are emerging to try to replace them. So like
Yeah.
fingerprinting is being repurposed as the new
Yeah.
cross site identifier, and then we have these so-called first-party identifiers like hashing sticky personal data like email addresses. So we believe, there's a belief that third-party cookies need to be replaced. Like that's the whole
Mhm.
fundamental idea of the privacy sandbox. There needs to be a replacement technology, and I'm still looking for somebody to explain to me in clear terms why it needs to be replaced. Like, what is the justification for throwing like billions of dollars into this innovation, and is it
As
absolutely necessary?
yeah, I mean, what would you call it? A classical advertising guy. I don't know how to refer to myself. I no, but I'm a student of advertising.
Yeah.
So like ad tech, like is at its core. I mean, it's an engineering problem.
Yeah.
It's a very interesting engineering problem. It's one that I tried to solve, and it was very rewarding. And the ads that my platform would run, I'm still proud of them. Like they're really good ads. I was very proud of the work that I did in ad tech. But yeah, do I think that yeah, one-to-one targeting is absolutely like necessary to running effective
Mm.
marketing campaigns, effective advertising campaigns, brand building? No, absolutely not. Like the advertising world was plenty successful and sophisticated
Mm.
before one-to-one targeting. I think one-to-one targeting in, I guess, at least in an open cross context sense, I think is going to prove to have been an anomaly. And it'll just move to a, individual to publisher context. So it'll be one to one, but one to one that's scoped.
Mm.
That to me seems like the most realistic um, compromise, given where we are right now, is that there can be a one-to-one relationship, because in digital you have to give somebody your data in order to interact with them. Like there's no way to, like, visit the site without connecting with their server, et cetera, et cetera. Uh, um, um, but I think things will be scoped, and there's like so many of the solutions now. That's exactly how they're working. Is they're saying, you know what, we're not going to enable fully cross context, cross site targeting. You're going to be able to scope an opted in relationship between a consumer and a company, and it's firewalled in that context. That invites a whole lot of other questions around scale of, like, how many people are going to opt in. You've got to now manage 100,000 little sandboxes versus just kind of monolithic third party cookie universe. But I, I I think that's workable. And I think for the larger publishers, especially the so-called tech giants, like that will work fine. They have very large audiences, very high levels of consumer intent,
Mm.
and it's all like in a environment where, like, if I go into Amazon, am I annoyed by all the ad placements that are there? Yes, I'm
Yeah.
annoyed by them. But am I creeped out? No, I'm just kind of annoyed because there's a lot of ads, but, like, I'm not creeped out. I don't feel like my privacy is being violated. Like, it's all like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, I'm here to buy stuff and you're here to sell me stuff. Or
Right.
like, this is what we're doing here. And behind the scenes, Amazon's developing tons of tech to kind of enable advertisers to work with their data in privacy safe ways, and personalize the ads that you see on various screens and applications inside the Amazon universe. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on kind of where I see it going, at least in the near term.
So this is a bit of a cliche, but what do you think about the notion that some of the biggest advertisers are also owners of some of the biggest ad networks? So we have, like, Google and Amazon and Facebook, and all of these actions, especially in regulation, have been designed to tear these big ones down. Like
Yeah.
that's literally their raison d'etre. That's what they're trying to do first, and then they'll tackle the smaller ones afterwards. But everything they seem to do, and everything browsers seem to do, just seem to strengthen the walls around those gardens. So they say they seem to indirectly benefit the very same companies that need to be torn down. Is this, like, how does this contradiction escape the people who are actually working on this stuff? Like, is this not blatantly obvious, or am I just
Uh, Now, by people who are working on this stuff, do you mean regulators, or do you
regulators,
mean
browser vendors, people who
yeah,
are
yeah.
building those prevention mechanisms?
um, so I think from the standpoint of regulators, like, I just think about the fact that the digital with a capital D, as we know it, web-enabled digital, I guess, is only like 30 years old, and so it makes sense that regulators are kind of just now catching up to the fact that this market that's only 30 years old, that went through a lot of twists and turns over that time, has now kind of become this oligopoly where Google, Amazon, Facebook, Meta, a couple of very large entities, control the lion's share of the ads market, the lion's share of the total addressable market of human beings on the earth. Um, and so it's almost kind of natural that it ended up that way. And yeah, I think that they'll have to impose some kind of regulation on this, because yeah, you can't have um, a situation where only a few companies on Earth, or at least if I'm considering the United States market, only a few companies in the United States control the lion's share of access to consumer attention, and they grade their own homework. And so it basically,
True.
I mean, no, yeah. So
Self-preferential.
yeah, so talk about, something that's anti-competitive. It's like, well, I, as an advertiser, first of all, if I'm going to reach consumers at any scale, I have to go through one of these publishers, or else I'm just going to lose my mind doing direct deals with 10,000 other little publishers. Um, and I have no idea how they're really spending my money because they're allowed to sort of do all the measurement. And so from a technological standpoint, now that third-party cookies have gone away, so third-party cookies at least um, provided third-party cookies and other things that have been deprecated, like I don't know, say log level data out of Google Campaign Manager, things like that, that used to be able to give an advertiser or an agency build an independent measurement view more easily. All that stuff is being deprecated sort of in the name of privacy. We also know that it benefits these walled gardens because they're then more able to grade their own homework and like you put it, Simo, be self-preferential. Um, like, I don't know that there's any way to unwind that now technologically because it's like third-party cookies are gone. That the tech that enabled the sort of independent measurement is kind of gone, and the regulations around privacy make it so that you can't make those solutions available anyway. And so maybe the browser makers will put something out there and I wouldn't even begin to be able to conceive of what the solution would be. But like maybe they can put something out there that facilitates independent measurement. But otherwise, I think it'd just have to be government regulators that are just going to have to say, like, look, you cannot, if you're in this special class of very powerful digital publishers, you are not allowed to publish your own measurement, or if you do, you have to provide data to these other sort of companies, this other class of companies that is going to measure this media for you, because yeah, otherwise we end up with a very, very distorted digital media market.
Yeah. And we have examples in the EU right now with the Digital Markets Act and the Digital Services Act that are specifically telling big companies to stop that,
Hmm.
open up your algorithms, and for telling Apple to, like, stop having a single browser engine and stuff like this. So it's going to be interesting to see how, because these big companies are like countries of their own. So it's going to be interesting to see, like, how much
The
momentum they still
freedom.
have in working on this.
The last thing I'll say on that topic is that I have always been much more bullish on measurement as being a thing that is solvable in a privacy friendly way versus targeting. I think it is much
Mm,
more difficult to solve targeting. I think it's much more doable to solve measurement.
yeah.
Will the regulators understand that? I don't know,
Yeah.
but I'm waiting for them to call me. But I think measurement really is solvable in a privacy friendly way, and so I think there are ways to make consumer privacy regulations agree with, call it like independent media measurement regulations, which
Yeah.
don't exist yet. But I think those two things can be put into agreement with one another.
Yeah.
Tell me about your digital, Miles, because we're about to wrap up soon, and I don't want to lose the opportunity to ask
Yeah,
you
yeah.
about. 'Cause I just got your newsletter. I signed up to your newsletter recently because people couldn't stop talking about it on LinkedIn, and you know my opinion about newsletters. I don't read too many of them. I only am signed up to the similar point, and
I
now yours. So
I
go ahead.
no, thank you. No, people, they love our newsletter, which is super flattering. I can't claim a lot of personal credit for producing our newsletter. Shiv, the U of Digital founder and CEO, contributes a lot to it, and we have a couple of other folks that contribute to it. Um, but yeah, I mean, our whole take on our newsletter is to it's only weekly, so it's not daily. Like, so we are literally designed for people who don't want to be reading newsletters all day every day.
Yeah.
There are,
It's
well,
only weekly. Are you kidding me?
uh,
I was looking at Simo because
it's it's essentially it's like 80% news aggregator, and then it's 20% like top opinion.
Gotcha.
So, you know, if you're a kind of an everyday professional in the industry, because there's people in the industry, I would consider the three of us sort of among them, who are both expected to have opinions and expected to be well informed, but then also we just want to be well informed. I like being well informed, and that's a relatively small subset of the industry. And so for um, those people are reading maybe even multiple newsletters a day. They're subscribing to all kinds of different stuff. But the vast majority of the people in the digital ad media industry, they're not like that. They want to do their day job. They want to succeed at it. They don't need to be reading 10 newsletters a day. And so our newsletter is really, really geared for those people, and even the people who are in the more kind of, we call it, wonkish subset. It's still helpful to have aggregation. It's still helpful to see what you missed. It's still helpful to see the opinion. But yeah, it really is. It's a highlights reel of what mattered in the previous week. So it's like in 10 minutes you just scan through and see what mattered. But anyway,
Nice.
I'll stop doing my spiel on the
I just
But
newsletter.
subscribe.
Oh,
tell
good,
us
good.
tell us about what are type of courses and educational programs you guys have at U of Digital. You went from agency to obviously client side and into the education field. So what type of learning programs, what type of skills you guys are teaching people, and why? Why? What problems are you solving for?
Yeah, so we fit into a unique space in at least the education, learning, and development market. So we focus just on digital advertising, marketing, and media. So we don't do traditional media. We don't do, I don't know, computer science. And we exist to serve professionals who need to learn strategic concepts. They need to get strategic context. So if these people are revenue generating or customer facing, they probably aren't um, hands on keyboard. Or if they are hands on keyboard, they're getting that training from somewhere else. We don't do hands on keyboard training because there's a ton of technical training out there. That's not our area of expertise. But what they do need is a way to develop stronger relationships with their clients, to be able to open up a conversation at 50,000 feet without having to dive immediately into a product pitch. Like if we're talking about, digital privacy, death of the cookie, all that kind of stuff. If you're selling that type of solution, you can't just immediately launch into your product demo because no one's going to understand what you're talking about. They're not going to understand why they're supposed to care. Whereas you're going to be a lot more successful if you can open up that conversation by, asking the client about their perspective on privacy, ask them about various strategies they're employing. It kind of build up a relationship. So we give our learners that kind of strategic context, and so we teach them on these. I call them big topics that are affecting their businesses. So in our world, it's things like CTV, death of the cookie, for sure, identity, analytics and measurement, privacy generally, data clean rooms, cloud, email, all these things that are changing right now in the industry that everyday professionals just don't have time to keep up with independently. And so we can come in and help address those knowledge gaps in a systematic way so that people aren't just having to like Google stuff in the 15 minutes before a meeting.
What about ChatGPT though?
What's that?
What about people that ChatGPT before the meeting?
So, so here's where we differentiate from something like ChatGPT. So you could totally use ChatGPT for a meeting. We have an expert network. It's over 200 people, 200 like
Oh,
senior people in the industry, and we run live interactive workshops. And so you're gonna get knowledge and perspective from you of digital that you're not going to get in a million years from
Wow.
chat gpt, because you're directly talking to a person who's been doing this thing for 10, 15, 20 years and can get very, very specific and really think on their feet. And a lot of our workshops, are live classroom style workshops, sort of end up turning into these ask me anything sessions
That's
because
so cool.
yeah, because it's such a breath of fresh air for our learners of like, oh my God, I've been waiting to talk to somebody like you, and
Yeah.
now you're right here in front of me, and I've got you for 90 minutes. And so, my clients have questions. I have questions for you. And so, anyway, we see a definite benefit on top of something like ChatGPT as a standalone solution. I think the strength obviously would be doing U of Digital plus a little bit of ChatGPT, because then everything that comes out of ChatGPT, you're going to have more of a perspective on how to use it. 'Cause that's the other thing. Like with the other problem with ChatGPT is like if you're not familiar with subject matter, you don't even know what prompt to put in.
Exactly. Or if you ask something, you wouldn't even know if it's wrong or right. You just
Right.
plaster that shit. I've
Yeah,
seen it.
yeah, I mean, it's better than Google, but if you really don't know the subject matter, then it's still going to be kind of mysterious to you.
How can people come to these workshops? Like, what do we do? Like, do you have a subscription? Do you have like a one time only? How can our listeners come and participate in a workshop? Because this, from what I'm hearing from you, I hear that you're teaching basically a lot of strategic skills. And for instance,
Yep.
if somebody, because me and Simo were talking about in the beginning of the episode about implementation versus reporting versus collection, like it's a lot of people with different skills. So for instance, if we have somebody that's a tagging specialist or implementation specialist that wants to learn more about the business strategy part to help better their team or their clients, how they could come to these courses and what could how can they take advantage of your network.
So go to uof.digital. Uof.digital is where to go to find out more. Our classrooms, we're typically working with clients on an enterprise basis. So we would work with one or more teams at a company. I think one of the things I'm excited to get into now and into the future is in, say, the analytics and data collection world, is helping those teams at a high level understand the other side of the business. Help business users understand data collection, help people who are dealing with data collection analytics understand the business side. But yeah, we're for our classrooms, we're working with clients on an enterprise basis. We typically partner with clients like on a year-long basis. That's another unique thing about our model, is we don't just do kind of one-time boot camps and assume that everybody's good. We like to add value to our clients over time, and then we do have an e-learning platform that you can access also through uof.digital. And that has some courses. It's got some great 101 level courses on kind of the digital advertising and marketing landscape. That's very useful for people who are either new to the industry, or maybe they're coming from traditional media, or maybe they are coming from the business side and they don't know anything about digital advertising. But yeah, uof.digital would be where to go to learn more. I'm Myles at uof.digital. If anybody wants to send me an email, Myles is how my first name is spelled. But
Did you
yeah, we'd
just
be we'd
ask
be
for
happy to
people
talk.
to send you email? You're a strange man.
Exactly.
I love it when people send me emails. I like meeting people.
So we're gonna add all of this stuff in the show notes. The U of Digital, your newsletter, which you put out once a week, and I'm gonna anxiously see how you do that. And then, of course, you're active on LinkedIn and Twitter, and we'll put those, or
Yeah.
whatever it's called these days, and anything else where people can find you. It's been a lovely talk and very very enlightening. Like, I think you said it well when you described the people who come to U of Digital, is that finally there's a person to talk to about this stuff,
Hmm.
because this is things you read from blogs, this is things you read from
Yep.
Google's privacy sandbox talks, this is things you read from GitHub notes, but then you actually have a human being on the other side of the screen. It turns into a much more interesting discussion, I think, and it's not as colored as what you would put into when
It
you.
well,
Probably
it's
depends on
not
the
just
person as well.
yeah. Well, it's not just colored. Like even I could go to GitHub right now and read privacy
Yeah,
sandbox notes, and they wouldn't make any sense to me.
yeah,
I will admit.
yeah.
I'm a smart person. It would not make any sense to me. I would need somebody to explain it to me in a
It's
very, very basic
unbelievable.
terms.
Like, it's unbelievable how complicated these things are, and you approach it from the point of view that this can't be complicated. Then you look at it, oh shit, it's super complicated. And then you're left wondering how much of this complication is actually manufactured as a kind of distraction to make you think it's complicated so that you don't look at the nitty-gritty parts where they try to
Well,
hide all the
you're getting too conspiratorial,
I
Timo.
know, this is the last you'll see of me. Anyway, Myles, it was an absolute pleasure having you on, and hopefully we'll see you next season as well to talk maybe more about education stuff.
Cool. Yeah, likewise. Thanks a lot for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you.